I think we're live. What's up, guys? What's going on? Josh, let me get a mic check really quick, make sure it's going through.
Good morning. Happy Friday. How are things going?
Wow, for the first time, I think people are actually going to be able to hear you on the goddamn stream, so that's exciting. Got the Mac finally in tune with everything, and live in south of Brazil, so it's hard to find some of the electronics down here, but I got a couple extra monitors I'm trying to hook up to, so hopefully in the future I'll be able to actually respond live. Next week I just bought everything for it. I should be able to respond live to chat while we're actually streaming here with Streamlabs up on another screen. I just don't want it up here when we're talking about this type of stuff because, look, we're here to talk about crypto. That's what we do on Fridays, and I think today is a pretty big day, right? Pretty big day. Josh, what happened last night?
I couldn't agree more. An executive order was signed to create the first national, but the United States first ever strategic Bitcoin reserve. And so it's officially in the books as a new order, and we can talk through some of those details today, but it's a pretty big day. Markets reacted unfavorably and then, of course, bounced, just trying to figure out what it really meant, dropping, over 5% in a few minutes, down below 85, 84K. But this morning, where are we? Nearly at 89K, where we were yesterday on the big sell-off on the NASDAQ. So that tells you something.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here. First things first. Well, I want to take this two different directions. The first thing I want to point out is that if you take what has been going on in the crypto space for the last decade, Wild West, very little regulation, if at any at all. And the moves inside of the crypto market for the last decade have been phenomenal. We're talking 1,000% moves per cycle type stuff up until the most recent one, altcoins going tens of thousands of percent and stuff. It reminds me of the trading environment that we had in the 80s with commodities, where there was this kind of wild west attitude as well. There's a lot of money to be made trading commodities in the 80s, but when the government stepped in and started to regulate it, a lot of what traders loved about the product or the asset class in general slowly went away. Actually, it went away pretty quickly. The edge, the volatility and everything, it diminished. And so here's the first part of this question. Is it a good thing that we're doing this from a trading standpoint, not from a strategic, like national defense standpoint? I don't care about long-term holding right now, just purely based off of a trading vehicle. Is it counterproductive for traders to want this to happen? Because the way I look at it is the more this stuff is gobbled up by state entities, the less volatile this becomes as a trading vehicle, and the less volatility there is as a trading vehicle, generally speaking, the less attractive it is to a trader. What do you think? Am I crazy there?
I'm honestly, I'm going to push back. Two reasons for this. First is that, yes, it will become less volatile as state and nation actors start stepping in the example of an SBR and increased regulation. But if you're looking for that volatility, crypto is more than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the lead, but crypto is more than that. Now there are tens of thousands of real coins and millions of scam and meme coins. And so there will always be something for traders to slide down the risk scale to get that volatility. Whether you're trading, shit caps that are literally under 50,000 market cap, like if that's your trading environment and where you succeed, that will likely continue to be available. And that goes even further with the SEC saying, I believe in the last week or two, that they don't consider meme coins securities. So again, that falls kind of under a commodity. So, people can do their sketchy behavior doing insider trading, pumping and dumping. While I don't approve of that, the volatility will still be a part of that market. I think the second side of that is it'll protect traders from things like FTX. With a little more regulation, you're not going to have your life savings in an exchange that's supposed to be safe and reputable. How many massive brokers, besides maybe the Lehman Brothers who weren't bailed out by the federal government in the US in '08, how many massive brokers have blown up in a single day in the markets, whether commodities or securities, and lost people's life savings, millions of dollars in seconds? With a little more regulation, you can avoid some of those scams, some of those massive fraudulent events, which will be better for the industry as a whole, even if it does reduce volatility by, however many basis points.
So first off, shout out to FTX and Mr. Sam Bankman-Fried. He just came out with an interview from prison with Tucker Carlson. It's amazing what you can accomplish with a couple $1 billion under your name, regardless of whether or not he still has it. That was surprising. I watched the entire thing. I thought it was went about as well as I thought it would be. I thought it was funny that Tucker Carlson asked him how much Adderall he was on at the peak of his craziness, and he said nothing. And the way that he was speaking through the entire interview, I now believe him. I don't think he was on Adderall, at least I don't think that the reason why he acts the way he does is because of Adderall, because he's looked cracked out in prison as well. I mean, that's just how he is. So let's go on to the second part of this question here. The news cycle. This was the peak of it. I mean, every bull market in the crypto asset class has a theme, this thing that they're going for, and it felt like this was kind of the number one thing people were looking forward to. This was it. The U.S. government was finally going to legitimize Bitcoin, and they were going to buy the goddamn thing. But, as I'm sure you're aware, at least for the time being, the Trump administration has said they will not be buying Bitcoin, and instead they will simply be holding or hodling criminal forfeitures of Bitcoin. They guesstimate that they have around 200,000 BTC right now. They are going to perform a full audit on that, but they likened it to Fort Knox for digital gold. Question here. Are you surprised at the lack of upwards movement in Bitcoin post-announcement, or were you expecting this? Because, once again, to me, this was the apex of the news cycle, and Bitcoin responded, for all intents and purposes, negatively. What good news do we have to look forward to now that you think is going to push this up higher this cycle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I agree. I was thinking that unless they announced, and potentially, the idea was tonight at the first ever White House Crypto Summit, was that if they don't announce they're buying tens of billions of dollars over a set period of time, then Bitcoin would respond unfavorably. And so reading that EO and seeing that the White House government will not be outright purchasing Bitcoin, I think that's largely why we saw that instant and immediate reaction to price, dropping us 5%. One asterisk is that within the order, the administration has advised Lutnick and Treasury Secretary Bezant to investigate the use of delta neutral strategies to acquire more. So that could be
That's
things
a new
like
thing that just came out this morning, right? Because the EO came out last night, and I was reading as I was scrolling on Twitter earlier. That was a soundbite, right? That just came out maybe 2 hours ago.
No, David Sachs posted it last night right
Did he?
after.
Okay.
In that long tweet we talked about in TTI, but yeah, within that it talks about the U.S. government is allowed to acquire Bitcoin via delta neutral strategies. So there's a handful of things what that means. I know people are looking into that still, but one example of that is using excess energy from whether that's power plants, hydroelectric dams, a number of different sources, and using that energy to power Bitcoin mining, and then acquire Bitcoin through mining, or if you're looking at other assets, which I know they're currently not for the SBR, staking those assets.
Interesting.
And so there are other ways the government can acquire more. And I think, one consideration while they're not buying is that $5.6 billion notionally right now isn't going to be hitting the market, which it was planned to for this year or next year under the previous administration. They had already begun selling in small quantities government-held Bitcoin. And so as a result, a substantial notional value supply will be locked up indefinitely. I think what kind of takes us higher is, potentially any announcements that come out tonight at the Crypto Summit. But also, I think people are underestimating that the U.S. government has just officially created an SBR for for Bitcoin. And, this will, in some sense, give a green light to other nation states to make that decision as well, to look into that, to investigate that, whether that's in the next month, year, or 2 years. There's a good chance that maybe other governments start looking into the use of Bitcoin within an SBR, and they might be allocating. We already know there are a number of countries who have already begun purchasing. Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, as examples, have already begun purchasing hundreds of millions of dollars worth. And you have other countries like Bhutan who've been mining and buying Bitcoin for well over a year now, I believe into 2 years, and they're sitting on billions of dollars of profit. And so, at one point, this will likely catch on and propel prices higher, as well as this regulatory clarity will tell people on Wall Street who maybe were still a little bit skeptical, even with the IBIT being an option to invest in, that this is something that the U.S. government is backing and holding as a strategic reserve asset.
So here's the final question about Bitcoin. We'll move into a slightly different direction. You're still bullish. I'm still bullish. Primary trends are still up. We're trading north of an upward sloping 200-day moving average. We're above previous cycle high at 70K. I refuse to buy anything. I'll go into that in a second until some conditions are met. But I'm still bullish. I still expect this to resolve higher. I don't think this is the end of the cycle. Are we in agreement?
Absolutely.
Let's put a price point at 105. Let's say we're breaking back out to all-time highs. This is an impossible question to answer, but for the viewers and for me, give me a timeline. Just give me a number. How many weeks? How many weeks out do we need to sit here and wait until this is back up at 105? And then potentially pushing higher. Yeah.
Okay. I would say within the next 2 months we'll be at 105, if not sooner. I'm giving a little bit of extra lead time. I would say within the next month.
I'll take the 2 month. Yeah, I'll take the over.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you're right though. I don't think this is the end of the cycle. I could be very wrong, but just based off of different. You go back. How long has this thing been a trading asset? 15 years now. You go back 15 years and you look at all the different cycle lengths and stuff. And BTC and crypto in general, you look through this cyclical and secular bear and bull, and they're a lot faster than the TradFi market. But having said that, they have elongated. Like they've gotten longer the further this asset, or I should say the more mature this asset has gotten, simply because there's more people involved in it, right? More hands involved, et cetera. So maybe 10 years ago, this would be back up at all-time highs within a week, 2 weeks. I think now that we're further out into the maturity of this asset class, I think 2 months right now. We're still in a primary uptrend. I think that's it. And I think people are freaking the fuck out because they have TikTok brain rot and they need this thing to go straight up in a straight line 24/7 or they're going to lose everything. That's not my fault. That's not our problem. So, okay, we're on board. Let me flip this conversation slightly in a different direction here. So Bitcoin, that we've established that the United States government has a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but they also have a digital altcoin reserve or something of the sorts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that part is what's starting to confuse people.
Before you get into this, I want to ask a question, and then I want you to explain it all for everybody in here, because I know you're in the trenches right now. If Bitcoin is classified within this SBR, and then every other coin is now going to be placed, or not every other coin, I know they have like a list: Ethereum, Solana, Ripple, Cardano. I don't know if there's going to be anything else added to that, but normally the majors there. They're also not going to be bought, just so everyone's fully aware. They're just going to be, if they're seized by criminals, the United States is going to squat on them, which is fine. But at this point, I think it's becoming very clear that there are two classes in the cryptocurrency asset class. There's Bitcoin, and then there's everything else. And at some point, and this is the question, do you think Bitcoin is going to be referred to as not a cryptocurrency, unlike everything else? Is Bitcoin going to be referred to as its own thing, and then the rest of the crypto market with all the other tokens? Because you can see the divide potentially happening right now. What do you think?
That's a good hypothesis. I don't think so. I think it will hold the cryptocurrency name. It might be kind of interchangeable with, as a commodity or some other asset type.
But you can see that the government right now is trying to label it as a different asset in of itself, even though it's under the umbrella of the cryptocurrency. Because if not, you would have lumped everything into one fund, right?
Yes, but there are a lot of differences between Bitcoin and everything else.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, just the age and being the first, right? It is the first mover, and as a result, crypto is based on uh, cryptographic encryptions and blockchain, and for that reason, I don't think it will. I mean, unless they make something up and call it digital
That's
gold.
fair.
But I do think it will stay labeled as crypto. But I think the delineation between crypto, like Bitcoin, as an asset, and the rest of the market will become more clarified by the government.
Especially legally, right? The legal framework is definitely gonna. I think it's gonna continue to split those two apart. It's a lot easier to do shady shit with altcoins than it is Bitcoin. And I think that's part of the regulatory framework that they might like try to put into place, is that Bitcoin is like literally the standard, and then there's everything else. So with this digital altcoin like reserve that they have going on here, what do you expect for like price wise? Is this going to impact the price of the alts? Is this not really a big deal? Is this as bullish as it is with the Bitcoin strategic reserve? What do you think here? Because like I said, I think they're picking up the majors, right? If I'm not mistaken, Ripple, Solana, Cardano, and Ethereum.
So I think that's where some of the confusion is, because on this past Sunday, when they kind of made the initial announcement that the United States is kind of utilizing a strategic crypto reserve, they called out specifically Ethereum, Solana, XRP, and Cardano, which are the top 5 crypto assets besides Bitcoin and market cap outside of stablecoins. But then this announcement about the previously announced crypto asset stockpile is just holding on to seized assets. So there's quite a bit of confusion around whether the government has, as an example, Cardano and Ripple currently seized and they won't be selling it, or why those were called out specifically. There's been a lot of conversations with Charles Hoskin, Brad Garlinghouse, the founders of Ripple and Cardano, have both spent time at Mar-a-Lago or the White House, and so trying to kind of understand where those assets
No invitation
fall
for Vitalik, or what's going on? Did he not have the time in his super busy schedule, or what's going on?
Yeah, I think he's trying to stay away from politics. No, I know. Vitalik's something else. But I mean, those founders, Ethereum has a spot ETF. It has a futures ETF. It doesn't need, an advocate for a smaller.
Got it.
No,
I think you're right.
Cardano has a $20 billion market cap. Ethereum, even though it's trades like shit, has a $300 billion, and it's number 2. Right. And so I think there's a lot of confusion around what that means. Again, tonight is the White House Crypto Summit. There's been news that more things will be announced, things potentially ranging from changes to, essentially changes to long-term cap gains, depending on what you're holding. The current rumor is that for, cryptocurrencies that are deemed American, whatever that may be, whether that's the company is based in the U.S. or if the asset is mined in the U.S., will have 0% long-term capital gains after holding for 1 year. So that might be more akin to, that Cardano, that Ripple announcement. But both Ripple and Cardano, as well as many other quote-unquote
really quick,
American...
let's back up really quick. I don't know what the answer is. I'm thinking to myself, like, how do I not know this answer? But how do you know where something is mined? Like, you can.
That's a great question. I mean,
it's legitimate, right? Like,
you typically know the distribution of, as an example, a
could
validator.
you geolocate something that was mined somewhere? Because that sounds like an OPSEC nightmare. I'm just like thinking.
Broadly, yes. I mean, right?
Oh,
Like, example of Bitcoin, and Ethereum, when it was mining, you knew the, general geographic regions that majority of coins mined. As an example, I believe the U.S. is approaching a 50% mining rate of the entire, Bitcoin ecosystem. And so talking to these smaller coins, there's no clarity on whether it's, percentage of assets mined within America, therefore it's made in America, or if it's the team is from here, the company is from here. And so, there was even rumors that
first. We want everything. We want crypto. We want all the scams. We want everything. I get it. Here's
exactly.
Here's a question for you. I was thinking about this earlier today. So the from what I can tell, the intent of this strategic Bitcoin reserve is to enrich American citizens, right? That's like the whole point. So I think President Trump came out and said, I don't know actually if he said this or if it was somebody else, and I might be mixing up who said this, but somebody in the administration, I'm pretty sure, either said this or alluded to the fact that they were going to use the profits from the Strategic Bitcoin Fund to help reduce the deficit. Am I crazy? Did I read that right? And or to give back. I don't know how the hell they would do that. That's not the point of the question, though. The point of the question is, if the United States government, for whatever reason, started selling Bitcoin out of the strategic reserve, wouldn't that crash the goddamn price of Bitcoin anyway and kind of deduce this whole thing to like a waste of time? Like, I don't know what their long-term goal is, and I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but if their goal is to use this asset that they're holding to eventually alleviate debt issues or whatever, when they go to sell it, like, who the hell is going to buy it? And if they do buy it, how much are they going to offload? Is it going to crash the price? What about Americans that hold it? You know, the government's going to be selling into people that are in the United States. Like, there's just so many questions I have regarding this, because if the United States does end up holding a legitimate amount of this stuff, which 200,000 Bitcoin is not a small amount by any means, but I would assume that they're going to want more at some point. What's the end goal here? Do you have any idea?
Well, I mean, in that post from David Sachs, one of the first lines in paragraph, probably I think 4, paragraph 5, the U.S. will not sell any Bitcoin within the reserve at any point. So
what the hell is the point? So they just want to lock up supply? That's it? That the whole thing is just to lock up supply and then?
Yeah, of course, there's a lot of questions around it, and if it doesn't
make sense to me.
And if they did start selling off, large quantities of Bitcoin, that would be, arguably the funniest outcome of, the United States government pumping and dumping.
That's what Elon Musk says. The funniest outcome is generally going to be the one that happens, right?
Exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, who knows, right? Especially under this administration, it is, it's kind of hard to understand what the next steps are going to be. But as of right now, there is no intention to sell. And so I think that's just, for the market, a bit of pressure taken off, given that Bitcoin was planned to be sold by the previous administration, via Chokehold 2.0, Operation Chokehold. And so, yeah, this offers a new opportunity. And I think a lot of folks are really looking at this, that the United States has fully embraced and legitimized cryptocurrency, and specifically Bitcoin. And so as a result,
the community is positive about what's going on. More, I mean, obviously they would have preferred a pop to 150,000 last night, but it's the sentiment is overall positive, or
I think it's mixed depending on the trader's timeline. We talked about. Well, I mean, the reality is we talked earlier on this call at the beginning that traders just want to see Bitcoin go up in a straight line, and I think it's more than that. I think traders don't really have any allocation to Bitcoin, but they have an allocation to smaller, higher beta coins. And as a result, those are all down 50 to 90%, depending on how volatile, right? And so, a 5% sell-off last night sent a lot of altcoins down 15%, and that just hurts those folks.
Their allegiance is to their portfolio, which makes total sense. It's the same thing in TradFi space. I get it. Okay. So exactly. We have a couple minutes left. Let's just throw the gauntlet at you really quick. So bullish Bitcoin, we're both there, but I don't know if I have to ask you this. What's your trigger at buying more, or are you actively buying more now?
I think 2 triggers, and it's obviously dependent on the outside environment. But if Bitcoin gets below 80,000 again, and specifically below 75, I want to be a buyer at those levels. I think above 70K, Bitcoin looks good. We ranged from 60 to 70 for 8 months of last year, and because I'm bullish and because I do not think the market's going to end this way, that would be a great buying opportunity. Otherwise, if we get back above 100, that's when I start looking at adding into additional longs, and of course on an all-time high breakout, hold a tight stop relatively, since there have been a lot of fake outs. We saw that on the night before the inauguration. But those are kind of the 2 areas I'm looking at. I don't need to add more now and add any more stress. I
mean, that's exactly what I'm thinking about too. So I have 2 triggers as well, except one of them has a caveat. So I'm bullish above 70K, but I haven't bought anything since we broke below that support level. It's just, for me, I don't know where the floor is going to be. I'm glad that we're finding support at the upwards sloping 200-day moving average. But for me, this could come all the way back down to 70K. And personally, that would still be a primary uptrend. And so I would dabble at 70K. I wouldn't throw massive orders on like I would trading into strength though, because if 70K gives, I have no idea where the next level would be where I would feel comfortable risking off of. So nibbling at 70K, but the what I'm really looking for is a move back up inside of the range and then a potential attack up and over that 105 area. I think around 93 to 95K. I'm a buyer again, but it also comes down to where we are with the total crypto market cap. I think that a majority of my buying, I'm going to wait until we're back up and over 3 trillion. That's been my line in the sand since we originally broke up and over it. It's treated me very well. I haven't bought anything when we're below the 3 trillion market cap, which is just previous cycle high. And as long as we're below 3 trillion for me, it's just be wary, be cautious. You can be, cautiously optimistic. That's what I am in the TradFi market. But for example, with the NASDAQ trading below the 200 moving average, I haven't bought a goddamn stock in the tech consumer discretionary communication space in forever because the NASDAQ has been trading like shit, right? It's the same thing with the crypto space. As long as we're below 3 trillion, this market is guilty and needs to prove itself again that it wants to get back up and over 3 trillion and start heading higher. So that's really my two triggers there. I would assume that if Bitcoin is back up and over 92, 93K, we're probably back up and over 3 trillion. And then that like 95-ish area, I'm starting to accumulate a larger position again. And then hopefully on like you said, a breakout of 103 to 105 and into all-time highs, I would treat that as a continued breakout and an upwards trend. And I would try to be as max long as possible off that pivot. I'm not afraid of buying strength into breakouts. A little different though is I would have a wider stop on there because I know that at breakout points, specifically with high beta areas, Bitcoin in particular, you get a lot of nasty whipsaw pullbacks because you have a lot of people that are playing with ridiculous amounts of leverage at breakout spots because they just started trading last week and that's what they learned on YouTube. And I know the market wants to take their cash. So typically you see whipsaws back into the level that you get a breakout of and it kind of clears out all that leverage. And so I give myself a little bit of a wider stop at all-time high breakouts. It worked great back in, when did we break out? November? When we originally broke out, November 6th, was it? Yeah, November 6th. I threw a position on with leverage up and over 70K when we broke out, and that position is still sitting there. So it's like I want to add up into strength. I want to defend the positions that I have right now at 70K. I'll nibble below 70K. I'm probably completely out until we're back up and over 70K. I don't want to mess around trying to find a bottom here, but I think we're both in the same camp. We're bullish. Primary trends are up. We're looking for further strength. Whether or not we get it tonight, I have no idea. If we get it, people are going to say, you're an idiot. You should have bought it. It's a White House. And if it doesn't, people are going to say, you're an idiot. It's a sell the news event like every single time. The only thing I'm going to say is just be cautious because it seems like the news cycle is starting to top out here. Personally, I would have expected with the executive order coming out last night, Bitcoin would have popped back up to like at least mid-range and we went nowhere. So
I agree with you. I think for the news that this was kind of coming, last Sunday we did pop, right? We popped from 85, 86 to 95, 96 and kind of sold off on that leverage in doing so. So we did see a bit of a
right?
pop.
Like it would have been a different conversation had we held this range, but we're right back underneath it. And I think, I'm not saying that I'm right here. I'm just trying to think of this from a risk standpoint. And by the way, I prefer it when we disagree because, well, first off, it's more fun. I like debating and stuff. But secondly, it's like, I always try to think of the risk before the reward, and I think that's where a lot of people they have a problem with. They're looking at the Lamborghini that they're going to be able to buy if the trade hits, whereas I'm thinking about, how I'm going to tell my wife that I lost 6 figures in a trade if it doesn't work. So I'm like, I should size down maybe? Should I move the stop a little tighter? That's where my head's at first before the reward. And so when I think about something like Bitcoin, which while it is finding support on an upwards rising 200 moving average, long story short, for me as a technical trader with TTI, the way I've been trained to trade for the last 15 years, levels matter more than a squiggly line on the chart. I look at support and resistance levels. That is exactly where buying is occurring. We can see it in volume. We can see it in the the candlesticks, and below 90K and above 70K. That this range here is a chop zone for me, something I don't want to play in. So I'm okay sitting on the sidelines and waiting, but just like everybody else, and TradFi as well, I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to resolve higher. This is just a correction. I'm not going to be holding my breath for a price pop tonight, but if we get it, dude, I'm right there with you. I hope we do, because I'm long.
Oh. Absolutely.
Okay, anything else you want to add there that maybe we didn't touch on that you think is important?
I think the only thing going into it, and actually adds to your side of the argument for what we were just saying, is that crypto has had, even outside of this SBR, has had a slurry of good news in the last month since the inauguration. Every week there's been good news. SEC dropping enforcement, changes to policy.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
It's fantastic news across the board, and when price doesn't resolve higher as a result of that good news, that is something that's bearish. So I can agree on that.
Market, right? When good news starts getting,
sold.
when what starts getting sold off into, you start to think, where we are within the market cycle, because at the bottom of a bear market, bad news starts getting bought and people get pissed. They go, how the hell can the market rally off of this bad economic news? What they fail to remember is that the market is forward looking. So while the data at the time might still be bad, the market is looking 6 to 12 months out and they're assuming the data gets better. Same thing at the top of a bull market. When really good news is coming out, but price fails to deliver the follow through, you have to start asking yourself, are we closer to the top than not? Because guess what? The market is looking 6 to 12 months out. And if they're looking at all this good news, but they're going, man, 6 months from now it might be pretty bad, or 12 months from now looks way worse, then they're going to start selling off into that good news and using people that chase that good news as liquidity. That's what I'm worried about right here, because, that you could make that argument right now and I wouldn't refute it. I don't think that we're there in the market cycle. I don't think this is the top, but still, this is what's kept me in the game for 15 years, not going against my rules. And when I start to see good news get sold off like this, or price fail to respond to good news like this, I always just like you're saying, take a step back and ask yourself, why? Why? Yeah. I think we had the most pro-crypto administration ever. All of this great news from the SEC has dropped its lawsuits on everybody. We just created a Bitcoin strategic reserve. We have we have a fucking president slinging shit coins. Like, come on, man. And now all of a sudden, we're not going up anymore. Like, that's information you got to ask. Why?
I mean, a potential why is with the election win in November, when he kicked off that run, the entire move from, let's call it 70 to 105 was the anticipation of these events, right? We knew that Gary Gensler was leaving. We knew SEC enforcement would stop and those cases dropped. We had a strong understanding that an SBR would be created, and we knew it'd be a strong crypto focused presidency. So as a result, the other side of the argument is that, instead of bouncing higher on each of these good news from 70 to 105K, going up in 5, 10K increments, we simply front ran that and, speed ran from November 7th to where we topped out essentially, besides the kind of wick up on before Inauguration Day on December 12th. So in a 1 month period, we ran 40% spot on Bitcoin. Altcoins went crazy. And now it's kind of that digestion mode of, okay, we did this. Now, what's the next thing that we weren't expecting to take price higher? So, if you have a country come out and say, hey, we're also doing an SBR and we're going to allocate,
I think you're absolutely right. Million. For lack of better terms, sorry for saying this, but, we say we post-nut clarity. You get ahead of yourself, you price all the good news in first, then you got to sit there and think about it for a while. And, price tends to consolidate, like you said, digest. Before the next leg higher, and you could be absolutely right. We could probably be in that phase right now. Find out in the next couple of weeks, right? We'll start it off with the White House Crypto Summit tonight. Josh, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Today's crypto report, March 7th, 2025. It feels like every single day there's a big news event coming, so we're very proud and happy that we have Josh on our side to be able to break this shit down for us and keep us in the loop. Josh, anything you want to say before we hop off?
No, let's just let's look to see prices resolve higher. It's always a pleasure chat.
Amen, brother. Have a good weekend. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll catch you next Friday.